Are you interested in becoming a real estate investor? If so, you really need to understand cap rates. And that's what I'm talking about today. This is going to be understanding cap rates for beginners. Stick around. Hi, welcome back. My name's Joe Brown. I am a commercial specialist with Century 21 Listwith Beggins, located in South Tampa. Thank you so much for being here with me today. So if you've watched my videos, you know I do a lot of residential videos, but I am a commercial specialist and I'm doing more commercial properties. And so I'm going to start doing more commercial videos. And I thought it was important to talk about cap rates because cap rates are misunderstood by a lot of public. Okay, so that's what I'm going to talk about. So number one, what is a cap rate? So it is really just a simple calculation to value a building. And it's a quick and easy way to compare different buildings or different properties. I say buildings, but different properties. So this is really for investors. That means you're going to buy a property and rent it out to tenants. This is really not a calculation for an owner user, which means I'm going to buy property and work there. This calculation really doesn't apply to you. This is an investment vehicle. Going to buy a property, lease it out. And so cap rate means a capitalization rate. Now, some people think, oh, it's my return on my money. Well, that's partially true. The cap rate is the expected return in that first year, right? And that also assumes you're not taking a loan, that you're buying the property for cash. Because if you take a loan, you are going to have debt service charges, debt service fees, which are going to impact your return. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. So, first of all, there is not one cap rate, right? There is a cap rate based on the type of property. So, for example, an office property has a different cap rate than retail or healthcare or multifamily. In fact, I prepared this chart just to share with you, and I pulled this from CoStar today, and so at the end of November, and this is for the past 2 years, and you can see the different cap rates. This is based on sales, different cap rates by the different property types. But let me go further and say the cap rate not only varies by property type, but also by location. A office building in downtown Tampa has a different cap rate than an office building, let's say in Brandon or Riverview, right? So not only is it property type, but also property location impacts the cap rate, the buying cap rate. So how do you use cap rates to figure the value of a building? That's a great question. So the key piece of information you need is what is the net operating income? Now, this assumes that the property is already leased. So there are tenants in the property. And the seller, who's an investor themselves, wants to sell the investment to another investor. You need to know the net operating income. So that takes into account, what's the gross rent income, right? If every space in that property was rented, what's the gross income? But you have to figure in, maybe vacancies throughout the year, vacancies within the building. Have to figure out, are you giving credits to tenants, 3 months rent, whatever. Then you have the operating expenses. After all that, you have net operating income. Well, what does that do? Well, that gives you a baseline, and then you divide that by the cap rate. And I have an example to show you, and I just threw numbers up here, okay? So let's say the net operating income is $65,000 a year. Now, so this would assume over the course of the year, after all the rent's been paid, all the expenses have been paid, the net operating income would be $65,000. And you can see I used the example of, let's say it's a 6% cap. Well, then you take the 65,000 and divide that by 6%, which is 0.06, and that gives you a property value of $1,083,000, right? So that's how you use a cap rate to find the value of the building. Well, don't go away. Let me change this for a second. And let's assume the NOI is still $65,000, but the cap rate instead of 6% is 7%. What does that do to the value of the building? It's now $928,000. So you see there's an inverse relationship. As cap rate goes up, the value of the building comes down. Vice versa, as the cap rate goes down, the value of the building goes up. So think about it from a buyer's perspective. The buyer wants to buy at a higher cap rate because remember, the cap rate is the expected return on their money. So of course they want a higher return. To get a higher return, you want to pay less money. If you're a seller, you want a lower cap rate because that means the value of your building is higher, right? And so the sales associates like me try and find that balance that both the buyer and seller are happy with, okay? I hope that makes sense. So the cap rate, so I showed you the chart earlier of the different cap rates. And so office is 7.1%. So I can take the 65,000, divide by 7%, and tell my buyer or seller the value of your building is X, right? But it would be $800 and some thousand. So let me share with you a story. I was talking to a gentleman who has owned a building for 30 years. The tenants have been in the same building 30 years. Very loyal tenants. And so he has kept the rent very low for them. Well, he contacted me and said, "Hey, Joe, I'm interested in selling the building." So using the cap rate for retail, his property is worth $440,000. But not really, because what he's collecting in rent, his NOI, is suppressed because he's not charging market rent. So to justify that, we would say to the pool of buyers, market rent is 2.5 times what the current people are paying. And so the value of the building is really $850,000, $880,000, based on what the rent should be, right? So for the investing for the current owners who are keeping rent low, absolutely that's great for the tenants. It kind of hurts them when they go to sell because of that suppressed net operating income. Another factor complicating commercial real estate right now in our current economic condition are interest rates and borrowing rates. So if you are a investor and you're going to buy a property and your cap rate, your expected rate of return for the first year, let's say is 6.5%. So, who wouldn't want to get 6.5% on their money? However, if you borrow money for that purchase, well, interest rates are over 8% right now for commercial real estate. So that's called a negative leverage situation. That what you're paying in interest to the bank is more than your expected return. So is that really a good idea? Well, it depends. But most people would say no, but that's not an accurate answer, right? And so here's the caution about using cap rates. It is just one measure. If you're a beginner, don't go strictly by cap rates because you're going to hold the property for a period of time. So what's the potential for that property? What's the potential appreciation of that property? So yes, you can go into a negative leverage situation and know that it's short term, that as rents increase, 2% a year, 3% a year, and there are some leases that are built that way, that rent goes up 2% a year or 3% a year, then that negative leverage then becomes positive leverage. And over your holding period, the property appreciates. And maybe you can control expenses a little bit more. Maybe insurance goes down. Maybe taxes go down. We would like that, right? So if you see a negative leverage situation, just don't say, oh, no, that's not for me. Think long term. Well, how long do you plan to hold a property? And can that property become a positive leverage and create a internal rate of return that you want a long-term return in the future when you go to sell? I hope this video was informative for you and had value. Please leave comments if you have questions or if there are other commercial topics that you would like for me to cover. I just mentioned internal rate of return. I will absolutely do a video of that in a few months. But please leave comments. If you're interested in commercial topics, please subscribe to this channel. And I try and do a video a week, balance between residential and commercial. You can go to my website. I have a commercial website, which is joebrown-commercial.c21.com. You can find out more about me. You can look at my listings. You can see other key information. I have some blogs out there. So please reach out. Let's interact. If you have questions, reach out to me. If you know people who are interested in buying as an investor, or you're an investor looking to sell, please reach out to me. Let's see how I can help you, okay? Thank you so much for being here. And until next time, take care.